Życzymy Państwu przyjemnej podróży.
Okay, now we can officially start. Thank you for joining the panel session today. My name is Viktorya. I will be your moderator today. This panel is organized in collaboration with the European Committee of Regions, a very important institution based in Brussels that wants to help and support local governance institutions all across Europe. And I think during the discussion we'll understand how important local governance is for the topic of housing. We have today quite a big panel for people that have very different types of expertise. So let me start by introducing them. So we have to my left Mr. Andres Jaadla, who is the member of the European Committee of Regions and their official rapporteur on housing. He's from Estonia. Then we, hello. Then we have Meta van den Starren, a researcher from Netherlands-based Telder-Stichting. Welcome.
Thank you.
Then we have, excuse me for my pronunciation, Krzysztof Kukucki, Deputy Minister of Economic Development and Technology of Poland. Yes, for your minister, please. And then we have finally Mr. Radosław Stępień, okay, a Polish lawyer, local government official, and former deputy mayor of this beautiful city that hosts us, Łódź. So why do we want to talk about housing today? I think everybody has the same understanding, more or less, even from the west to east of Europe, that the affordability and accessibility of housing has become increasingly out of reach for many, particularly for younger people. We see that due to inflation, migration, tourism, demographic changes, it is more and more difficult to become a homeowner, to have affordable rent, and a lot of people are trying to find solution to this. So during this panel, we're going to talk about the problems, why this is happening, what is the role of the national governments and local governance institutions in dealing with the consequences and potentially also preventing them. We'll take a look at the component of sustainability in housing, which is also a very interesting one, filled with a lot of innovation. And finally, we'll try to have best case studies from different European countries and see whether, potentially we can adopt some of them. So let's start with Mr. Jaadla. This is the first time that the European Commission officially has a Commissioner for Housing and Energy. Dan Jorgensen, who is from Denmark, he is a social democrat who will be in charge of the housing and energy portfolio. In the mission letter that usually the Commission President sends to the potential Commissioner designate, she talks about different funds and initiatives for housing. Could you please break down for us what does it mean to have a Commissioner for Housing for average a Polish person, a German person, a Slovak person, and what can we expect from the Commission during this mandate?
Thank you. I represent here the Committee of the Region. Committee of the Region is the official European institution who represent. We work similar like European Parliament. We have 278 members with different member states, and we represent the interests of citizen region around Europe. This is the background information. I represent here the Renew Europe group. If you speak about start of new period of the European Parliament and European Commission, it's true. President Ursula von der Leyen has nominated as candidate. This is not official yet as commissioner, but this really we have candidate for first time. This is, I think, historical moment. First time in history in European Union we have commissioner for housing who is responsible for energy and housing. And I think this is start of change of paradigm in Europe. That's before. Housing was responsible of the member states. Every member state has their own housing policy, but we have many European policies. Over European policies was related with housing, energy policy, social policy. Something was related with housing, and right now it is big hope, and every stakeholders group of interest group have their own hope how the housing look like. If you speak about housing, our housing is very wide area of the policies, very wide area of the different elements. We start with energy efficiency, we start with affordability, we speak with young people, we speak with migration, we speak with many other things, rising of the prices, credits rising, everything. But looks like this is really, as you say before, this is really question for every member state. Does the people understand what the housing is? Housing is everybody's here home, and everybody take care what his home look like. And if you have young people and you looking what's going on, we survived the COVID crisis. After then come the energy crisis, pricing for energy rising. After then come the interest rates going up, and this looks like right now. We have many problems in Europe. What we must solve in the level of European Union, like common European policy. One is affordability of the housing, and we represent here the local and regional authorities. Where is problem? You know, here is former Vice Mayor of Lodz. Where the people go first? They go to the city office and ask for the mayor. I'm a problem with living, I'm problem with social problem, and we see here, we pushing as committee of the region. Our opinion was approved in 17th of April this year, and we are pushing these topics to the new parliament. This must have some solution over European way. We speak about touristification of the housing. We see, I think, in big cities, probably in Lodz, in Warsaw, in Poland, in the big capitals, they lot of housing stock go out for the housing market. They're using like seasonal hotels, and they earn his money for the summer season and the winter season. This the areas, this the real full districts. They empty. This is not anymore for living. This is from the seasonal using this. There was some regulation, but they have no pay any taxes. We have compared with hotels. They have strong rules. This is a question. Many questions. It's ongoing war in Ukraine, migration from the south part of Europe. How we can deal with these things? We have many hot topics what we must solve in European level. And then Jørgensen have very strong, I can say. Everybody asks a lot of questions. Yeah. How this man come as new commissioner, how you can solve this question. In beginning of this week, I was in European Parliament. I was discussing with European Parliament members this. I represent the view of local and regional authorities, and every member of Parliament have a lot of questions to the new commissioner. We can see that coming on.
Yeah, the commissioner hearings are going to be in November, so we're going to see what questions our MPs are going to ask. But Mette, I want to talk about the Netherlands, because the country where you come from has had its own fair share of problems with affordability and availability of housing. Amsterdam is one of the toughest places to find a home in. You wrote research actually about it, about the lessons that the Netherlands can learn from its past mistakes and other European countries as well. Can you talk about it a little bit more?
Yes, thank you. Well, as you already said, the regions are very important on the housing questions, but I also especially want to advocate the importance of national control and the drive behind new housing. The Netherlands had a very rich history of spatial planning, and 10 years ago we thought the housing market was finished and that the population didn't really grow anymore, so there was no need for spatial planning anymore on the national level. So we abolished the ministry. As a result, local and regional governments became responsible for new housing, and as a result there came a lot of new procedures and requirements which made the process of building new homes even more difficult. And now a project from A to Z takes like 10 to 15 years to accomplish. That is mainly as a result because there is no national spatial planning anymore. Due to the over-regulating, there is like the market, there is not enough supply for new housing. And the Netherlands, we have a very, the top layer of the population is supported, is financially supported because of the mortgage interest deduction. And the lower population is also supported financially in their housing costs. And as a result, like the middle class is now stuck because they do not afford enough to buy their own home, but they like make too much money to get financial support, so to say. Yeah, so that would be like the three biggest lessons.
So abolishment of the ministry, so it was kind of decentralized.
Yes.
The dealing with the housing market, overregulation, and also extreme care for the upper income people and the lower and the middle class suffering. Okay, let's move to Poland. And Poland also has recently seen inflation, and the key urban areas actually need thousands of new apartments. How do you plan to build, considering the growth of the population, like the new migrants coming in? What is the plan for Poland for the next few years?
No, ja trochę nieuprawniony jestem.
I'm not fully competent to speak on behalf of the government because I'm no longer part of the government, but I am part of the local government, been for several months, and what we've worked on in the ministry also in collaboration with the EU, as I participated in a summit of ministers for construction in Liège in March, and representatives of 22 EU states signed a common declaration stating that we need to work on the housing market to ensure greater availability of housing. If we speak about the common market and the free movement of workers, goods, services, so on, we need to provide appropriate conditions. And the availability of housing, especially for young people, is very difficult. Therefore, I definitely accept the fact, and I'm happy that we are moving in that direction as the whole European Union, and the appointment of a housing commissioner is an important step, and as we modified, the EU modified the whole continent, or transformed the continent in terms of transportation, and other issues. Also here we need to transform housing, for example, in order to help with the movement of employees. In Poland several years ago we had a small revolution or evolution among local authorities, and indeed the local authorities are striving to give Polish people a real choice, so to make sure we are not
forced to buy. If you want to feel safe, if you want to have a roof over your head, as we saw here, about 50% of the people in this room are owners of their houses or apartments. But the question is, are you really owners? Or maybe you will be owners in 20 or 30 years once you pay off your loans or mortgages. As formerly, many apartments and houses are formally owned by banks, and we need to also offer apartments for rent. If I don't want to pay a mortgage, well, here where the authorities can step in, especially if the local authorities should collaborate with the central government in developing housing for rent. And indeed this is happening, and there are decisions to ensure that the apartments being built by the local authorities be subsidized by the central budget to a greater extent. No, the amount increases from 1 billion to 3 billion this year, and I hope that it's still going to be increased. 3 billion apartments. This is several thousand apartments on the market, new apartments. It's 115, 120,000 commercial apartments every year. So if we introduce an additional 20,000 annually, it should have a significant impact both on prices, because, for example, several thousand apartments will not need to be rented from the commercial market because they will be cheaply available, and several thousand of Polish families will have a real choice whether they want to take out a loan, a mortgage, or not. Okay, maybe I've gone too far.
About the collaboration with the local governments and the national governments to building. Radosław, you have worked in local government. I would like to know your opinion. Do you think that this collaboration so far is going well, and what is there to change? What is the role of local governments, of the mayors?
So I have, będziemy mówić po polsku, widzę, że większość z Państwa nie ma.
I think I'm going to speak in Polish, because most of you are not wearing headset now. I have the unique experience that I managed the housing sector in Łódź right now as a president of Widzew Housing Association. We provide apartments for the needy, but I also was a manager at the Bank Gospodarstwa Krajowego. I would love the situation to be as nice as Minister said before me, but first of all we need to change regulations for social housing, social apartments. I would like to give up this term right now. If you want to be eligible for such housing, you need to meet certain criteria, and then you're on the list for some time. But that's not the only problem. These are not kind of rotating apartments. There's a strange way of inheritance, so they do not really rotate. So let's say if somebody has another possibility to live somewhere else, such apartments should kind of be returned to the common pool, but it is not the fact. But so we should introduce a kind of institutional renting managed by towns and communities, for example, for students, so that students would be able to rent
an apartment managed by the public sector, and later on they would not need to leave such an apartment once they start or get their first job. But this does not mean that they would always pay the same rent. And indeed, rents should be revised in practice. It is very imperfect. Now, what is the relationship between a commercial market and social housing? Now, I would disagree with the previous speaker in that these two segments affect one another, because right now it is not the case. Clients or who look for social housing, they are definitely not the potential clients of apartments provided by the developers. They might become such clients of developers in the future, and it would be wonderful, but usually it is not the case. Now, we provide through housing associations the inhabitants of these apartments, they need to contribute their own payment, let's say down payment, but then the rent is regulated. So until we get or we arrive at a stable rent, which is not fully commercial, we will have a situation as it is today, and very high rents in the commercial sector, and the tendency to pay off mortgages.
Housing and people who are in dire need, and so the extreme. I'm sorry, I'm going to turn this off because it's. Yes. And a big part of the other extreme spectrum of problem of housing is this question of homelessness. And we've seen that since 2019, the number of homeless people in Europe has doubled. And in 2020, I think Renew Europe passed a resolution in the European Parliament, advocating for ending homelessness by 2030. In Poland, there's also a big question of homeless people, 31,000, I think the research says from this year. And 10% of those are migrants. Yes, 10% of those are migrants, and 60 of those 10% are Ukrainian migrants. I would like to ask, first of all, our Polish speakers to talk about Poland's own experience with homelessness, and have you tried to deal with it, prevent it, or you are more having a reactive approach, and maybe also comments from the Netherlands and Estonia as well.
Well, honestly speaking, homelessness in Poland is neither defined nor identified in Poland, because we see homelessness in its extreme form. When people live in the streets, they sleep in parks and so on and so forth when weather permits that. Well, of course, the city can offer some basic accommodation and basic social services, but we are not sure how many people are homeless, rotating homeless, let's so to say, who move from one place to another without having any permanent home or address. So this sector of social services, which identifies all these cases, should be active, and that should be followed by a policy of offering some housing to them. I'm not for building special social centers for them, because there is housing available from the city that can be adjusted to cater for basic needs of the homeless people. Well, in fact, this housing issues should be divided into several categories. So if we speak about the homelessness, well, these social services, they perform better or worse. And I agree that in most cases we see how these homeless people who live in the streets, and we don't see the much bigger group of people who have problems with having a permanent place to to live. They maybe don't live in the streets, but in Poland, between 35 to 45% of people are within the so-called rent gap. So either they don't have an apartment or they live in an apartment which is below their needs, below their standards. We have also an aging or a group of young people who don't move out from their parents because they have nowhere to go. And that's also translates into demography, because for objective reasons it's hard to increase the birth rate if at the age of 30 you live with your parents. So as I've said, well, in the city of Włocławek we are building, we have this housing association, we build houses, well, as local authorities we build social housing, or that will be occupied by the poorest section of the society, but the standard is quite acceptable. But we also offer higher standard apartments for those who still until recently were not within the area of interest of the local authorities because they are too rich to get social housing. But on the other hand, they can't get a loan from the bank, so they can't buy an apartment for themselves. So I see that increasingly more local authorities are addressing the solutions to this group for different reasons to fill this rent gap, or at least to close it.
To your colleagues as well to speak about. Maita, you want to take on the topic as well?
Yeah, well, I agree with the former speakers that you need to make a distinction between, like, is it a housing market problem or is it a social problem? I think if you talk about the housing market, it is very important to acknowledge or to see that housing is influenced by other policy areas. So if you do something as a government on the social, in the social domain, that is going to influence also the housing question. And second of all, there are enough builders, there is enough money. So the governments also need to look at themselves and maybe take a step back, because there are a lot of companies who want to do something but just can't do anything because there are certain requirements stated by local governments. So yeah, well, I'm from a liberal think tank, but I think it's very important to notice that a lot of, or in the Netherlands, for example, there are a lot of office spaces empty, and they are just not allowed to make homes in there, and that is a governmental problem and not a housing problem or a homeless problem.
Can I just build on that as well? Because I think another big part of the accessibility are these also short-term rentals and Airbnbs that we're talking about. We have seen this year there has been a lot of revolt against these companies in different European countries and in general against tourism. People are saying that they're being pushed out of their historic communities where they have lived and their parents have lived. So a lot of the countries have the initial instinct of banning these organizations. Do you think it's actually the right approach, it's productive, or there is a better and smarter way to regulate it?
Well, research shows that short-term rentals in a certain area increases the value of home properties. So the people who already have a home, it's beneficial to them. But the people who are first-time buyers or who are renters, they become, it's more difficult for them to access a home. So in that sense, it is a good idea to put a ban on short-term rentals. But on the other hand, there are other places to live. So it's maybe a little bit extreme, but as a government, you can choose to build another city. You can build other neighborhoods. So in that sense, from a liberal perspective, there are other alternatives. On the other hand, and if we do not put a ban on it, Amsterdam will become an entertainment park, so to say. So we need to make a choice if that is what we want.
Thank you very much. Let's talk about Estonia, Andres. One big part of actually affordability of housing is also how sustainable the house is. And there's a lot of misconceptions about whether making houses sustainable actually makes them affordable or not. And I know that recently Estonia had this initiative of renovating a lot of houses and actually making energy consumption more sustainable so that it would cost less, and it has been working. Can you tell us about this renovation project? What is the scale of that, and how do you think it actually impacts the availability?
Yes, of course, I have some comments, of course, for homelessness and things too. But if you start with homelessness, I see this, as you say, this is two or many background homeless. One is the social background, that this is people who could manage his life. Another one is lack of housing in the city. What I was leading in Estonia, we are middle-sized city. We as municipality we cover the need of homelessness who are social needed, but the other things is the lack of the affordable housing, and this is why we start rising this in the committed region level. We are feeling this is not anymore question for the social vulnerable groups, but is even attack to the middle class. Tomorrow morning is Monday morning. You see what's going on in these streets. This is question. Housing is related with mobility. The middle class people could not live anymore there where they live. You see what is the auto street is full of cars. They must leave. The city center is occupied by housing. What is occupied by touristification? They could not able to live there. They must leave 100 kilometer way to the capitals where they have job. This is policemen. They are nurse. They are teachers, and this is a new problem for the local authorities. How we can manage this mobility question if you have not affordable housing anymore in city centers. But to go back to the renovation, I think this is not only Estonian initiative, but this same things in Poland. We was in last year visit Gdansk. In Gdansk is, in Poland is the longest housing house in Europe. This is, you can drive with bus 3 or 4 stops. I think this is like 3 kilometers building or something. And how you renovate this question to the Gdansk city government. But in Estonia, we really start the renovation with, we must be thinking new and innovative way. And we start, and we have in 19 local authorities, we have pilot project. We renovated the Soviet time building. They have a lot of energy user. We renovated with prefabricated panels. You can make this in a factory very quick, and you can cover and insulate the buildings with 1 week. If you not do this, if you not start with European level, European renovation wave, the middle class people who are living or renting apartment, they are paying more big part of his salaries to the energy costs. They are living like not like the homelessness, but they're living like energy poverty. They have know if energy prices rise and your building is not energy efficient, you pay very high energy bills, and if you have salary and you become the everyday invoices, and pay them, you have not money for the real life what you need. You go with children, go out with families, and this is a question of the other energy poverty question, what is related with renovation wave. And housing stock, it is one of the most energy user in Europe. And I think this is one big hope of new commissioner to not only for the European structural funds or cohesion funds, but same times to relate it with some private financing, Committee of the Region working with the European Investment Bank to build up some financial models. And many countries have the different finance model, how you support the renovation. And we have calculated in Estonia, the 50 government support the renovation of building, Soviet time building. This brings back to the taxpayers like this is like perpetuum mobile. This comes back for the builders' taxes. They come back for the building materials producers. This is what the rise the local economy too, and this is the one big question of the housing too. How we can renovate all this building. Same in Netherlands. You have in canals. You have build what is built in 1516s. This is same energy user too, like in Belgium, in Netherlands. This is not only the new member state question. This is, but I think one solution is what we tried in Estonia and I heard in Poland and Germany too, is quick renovation. As these are built, so very quick renovation with the prefabricated panels, with cheap, efficient way to keep people not go to the energy poverty.
Thank you very much. That's actually very interesting, and I personally feel attacked as well, because until I moved from Armenia to Belgium, I didn't realize how much energy cost. And now I realize that my windows are not fully insulated in my apartment in Brussels, and I'm always paying extra for that. But I want to go back to the minister, and because Andres mentioned about the private investment and kind of private funding for renovation and for building new houses. How the government work with private money, public-private partnerships? How do you engage them? What are the terms? And are there actually enough interested actors in Europe who want to work in this sector?
To na początek oczywiście się muszę...
Well, I'd like to tell you to start with, because in Włocławek we have 432 apartments that were built recently of prefabricated materials. And that's important, because the first stage for 288 apartments were built in 18 months. Well, prefabricated materials not only allow us to use adequate technologies to increase energy efficiency, but also to shorten the lead time, and I mean fully equipped flats. Well, the other phase took us 13 months, so even shorter. Yes. Last year, I had the pleasure to be a part of the panel in Vienna, where at a similar event like the one here in Łódź, we were speaking about prefabricated materials as the future of improved energy efficiency in housing construction. And a large proportion of the output of our factories that manufacture such prefabricated materials, they export them to Sweden, to Scandinavia in general, and they work very well. So this is definitely the future. But when it comes to our country, in this and the solutions about the standards for energy efficiency, we are not behind Western Europe. These new houses that are built, be it commercial or public, so to say, market, they all meet these standards. Also, in our national recovery plan, we have an envelope allocated for the improvement of energy efficiency, improvement by 20% above the standard norms. And that's happening right now. But I will tell you about local authorities, but they are the closest to the people, where local council councillors, they also don't want to waste money for energy. So heat pumps, photovoltaics, recuperation, and these solutions become a standard also in social housing. Well, social housing, that is apartments owned by the local authorities, that's a fact. That's not the future. It happens here and now, and I fully agree that in this modernization or renovation process, we have around the gap in housing is 2 million apartments, and at the same time we have over 1.5 million apartments which are not used anymore, or they are empty and they were bought for investment purposes. So instead of invest in the stock market, people buy apartments to avoid risk, and they are left empty. But they are also, some of them are also decapitalized because are dilapidated, because Łódź, Włocławek, Poznań have problems because their housing tissue that is owned by the local authorities, usually in the city centers, is of very poor technical quality. So it's very important to have funds for modernization or renovation. So when we carry out these investment projects, we obey the currently binding norms. So buildings in city centers which are being renovated, they comply with energy efficiency norms.
When we started this session, I asked the question to the audience who wants to become a homeowner, and we have seen a few hands in the audience. And loans from the banks and credits are very important as kind of financial schemes for the first-time home buyers. Trying to be in the shoes of a first-time owner, a young person in their 20s or 30s, what are the challenges and opportunities that they face when they are trying to buy one, when it comes to actually having the financial resources and the loans and on schemes? Do you think that there is enough kind of government policy with schemes available for them? And I would like to ask that question both to Radosław and to Mida.
There's less and less possibility for young people to buy their own home. In the Netherlands, you see only people who got a grant from their parents are able to buy a home. That is also actually a reason why the prices are so high, because there is too much money. People can actually spend that money on their home, so we shouldn't forget that too. Can you repeat your question?
When it comes to acquiring loans and the government schemes that help. For example, in Belgium, there is something called Fonds Logement. In Armenia, there is a system where you can kind of compensate your income tax and add it to the interest rate. Any kind of financial support mechanisms for first-time home buyers?
Well, we of course have the mortgage deduction, interest deduction, but that is actually something that is not very well for prices, because it increases prices. But I do think that we, or as a society, we need to find a way to support each other more, because I can rent a home in a city for like 1,100 euros, but I'm not allowed to have a mortgage of 600 euros a month. So now in the Netherlands, we don't have an answer for that, but it is absolutely something that we need to consider.
The answer, and also just one additional question, because there was a preferential scheme as well for Polish young people, right, to buy an apartment in 2025, and it ended up in actually increasing the price of the apartments.
Cudownych rozwiązań nie ma. Dyskutujemy w tej chwili na...
There is no silver bullet. Now we are discussing a 0% mortgage for young people, so that the state would take over the burden of interest. But for those interested in it, there are quite a few supporters, but even more people against it. Even in the government itself, well, the government is polarized over it, which is surprising. Before that, there was a 2% mortgage program, and I would approach it with great caution. We have experiences with this instrument. Some of you remember the Housing for Youth program. I worked on that program, and that contribution from the state was limited by the price and area. And what happened when the market was overheated and there were no or very few apartments that people could buy in the market on those conditions, but a little later, when the market cooled down on many houses or buildings, there were banners saying, okay, housing for youth. You must remember that it all greatly depends on the market situation. If the market is overheated, if the apartments are going up, the prices are going up, then if you introduce a program like this, it will still increase the prices even further. But on the other hand, if the prices are going down, I would recommend an article in the Rzeczpospolita newspaper on this subject, but the prices are going down not only in Łódź, but also in other cities after what could have been called a craze in recent times. If we're able to launch this program with sufficient on sufficient conditions at an appropriate time, but you must use such an instrument very, very carefully. And I also had experience with state-supported rents. Bank Gospodarstwa Krajowego created a special program for social rent apartments. What happened? At low prices, it worked very well, but when the prices went up, it was renting an apartment in that building was more expensive by 30% than elsewhere commercially. So you must be extremely cautious. You need to choose the right time.
Claire Colleran-Molloy, Mayor of Ennis in Ireland. Claire, from your experience of actually dealing with housing, do you agree and disagree with your colleagues? Is the Irish experience completely different from what we have here today? And keep the microphone like...
I'll stand so that you can all see me. Forgive me if my back is to you. It's a great pleasure to be here as a county councillor for the past 10 years in Ireland, and also for the past 3 times mayor of Ennis. Ennis is on the west coast of Ireland in County Clare. It's a fairly large town. It has about 29,000 inhabitants, and the county has about 130,000. And we're lodged between 2 major cities, Galway and Limerick, for those of you who might know the area. So it was wonderful to be invited here today to speak as a mayor, because it is true, and I know I'm speaking to another ex-mayor and county councillor for many years. This is the predominant issue for us as elected representatives. And you feel sometimes at a loss, for sure, in trying to help people. But I do want to refer right back to Metta's contribution when she talks about the Dutch government and their loss of sight of the importance of future planning. And I did make a couple of notes because, can you all hear me? I'm still on? Good. So it is the top challenge, but you know, I was in Lisbon a couple of weekends ago at the ALDE Congress, and there was a summit of the mayors there. And the new commissioner being tasked with housing and energy has to determine what are the causes of this in Europe. What are the causes that have contributed to a housing crisis? And the juxtaposition between housing and energy is very clear to see, as you've just indicated, why that is so important. But as a person who has studied European law, comes right back to the fundamental freedom, primarily the fundamental freedom to move within the European Union. If you can't get a house, if you can't get a roof over your head, you really can't be as European as you'd like to be. So if I might, I just want to share what the Irish have been doing. Now, you said it, Meta, there's not an issue about money or resourcing. This is an issue about lack of forward planning. And in Ireland, when I returned from the United States, I'm Irish, but I have experience of the United States, we were building 90,000 units of houses per year. It was crazy. It was way too much. And then we had the cliff and we had the crash. And at the beginning of this government in 2020, we were building about 20,000 units in Ireland. Now, what happened was, back in the 1980s, Irish local authorities, Irish county councils stopped building houses. That was a fundamental error. We should never have stopped building houses. Even in the crash, we should have kept the trickle of houses being built. Why? We wouldn't have lost all our skill set down to New Zealand and Australia or Canada. So right now, 2024, at the end of this year, it's likely that our Minister for Housing, my party colleague, will be able to announce that we've doubled the quantity of house builds in Ireland from 20,000 to 40,000 for 2024. Moreover, though, and nobody in the panel has yet spoken about this, the Irish government have taken a very innovative position when it comes to vacant houses and derelict houses. These are houses that are there, they're not being used, they're not being lived in. So the government, again, because there's no issue with resources, they're handing money out to people to the tune of 50,000 for an empty house that's been empty for 2 years, or 70,000 for a house that's been derelict for 2 years or more. And the uptake on that in my county alone has been extraordinary. In the past year and a half, some 17 million euro has been approved for grants for the bringing back of old houses into new stock. That is extraordinary. It's a really successful program. And I could share more, but I have a feeling you want to move on.
Yes, because we have more or less 5 minutes left, and I know that we have to be very strict on time. I have one more question to Andres on innovation in the housing sector, but I want to first ask the audience, because I know you probably might have some questions. If not, then we can... Yes. So there. Can we take 2 questions for now and introduce yourselves, please, and mention to which panelist you address your question.
Ja mam pytanie do pana.
My question goes to Mr. Minister Kukucki. You spoke about a huge number of vacant houses and apartments, and many of them are owned by people who don't want to let them out, just not to have problems. But we know the problem you meant. In Poland, we have legal regulations under which, when you rent an apartment or house, you cannot be evicted. You can stay for years, and it's very difficult. If the law were more friendly to owners, perhaps they wouldn't be afraid of unwanted tenants. And we very often heard about such situations in the media, and the tenants who occupy houses for years and live at the cost of house owners. And I think this actually is not sufficiently debated, and we should provide some safety net to the owners to facilitate eviction, to make sure the owner is not worried whether or not the tenant moves out.
Yeah, if we can try to keep the answers under 1 minute, would be very nice.
Moje nazwisko Małgorzata Szpakowska.
Małgorzata Szpakowska. My question is to all panelists. What should the state do, or the local council do? So should they let out apartments belonging to the council at low rates, and then Obviously, the city council would also need to obtain funds for providing those houses or apartments. Now, if one pays rent that doesn't cover the cost of maintenance, and somebody needs to fill in the gap. So if people pay rents below the cost of maintenance, that is valid now in city councils, or should you build social housing and let them out at, let's say, at rates that cover depreciation? So what is the main goal for city councils? Which of the two options is better? Okay, once again, I'd like to emphasize one thing. For the past 5 months, I'm out of the ministry, and I think that the answer must be multidimensional, both for the first and second question. Well, first of all, the law is such that the problematic tenant is, by the end of the day, a problem of the local government, because the council needs to provide social housing for such a tenant, even if they are evicted. Now we still speak about people. They may be in trouble paying rents for different reasons. We must remember about that. So these are very delicate issues. But there is a common denominator here. If there are too few houses, this circulation or rotation is impossible, because if I cannot, well, let's say there is somebody who hasn't been paying for an apartment since 1984. If I cannot offer him or her an adequate apartment, let's say a small apartment in my own housing stock, they don't see any problems. So again, we need to give the courts an opportunity to act effectively. They should have the tools to enable circulation or rotation of apartments. And the second question, it's already happening now. Local authorities, councils are building apartments for houses who are within the rent gap, 35 to 45% of the population. In Wrocław, for example, 1145 zloty, which is depreciation rate. And speaking to my colleague here, if we actually provide public funds, these funds should be used for the development of the public stock. So this is a subject we could discuss for a long time.
So comment on that, and yes.
One comment about social housing. We in the Netherlands have 27% of our housing stock is social housing, and we still have problems with availability, and so social housing isn't always the solution. If you want cheaper houses, you need more houses. It's that simple. So I would say, as a government, you need to sit down with developers. Developers know how to build houses, and but they need to do it with they need to make some profit. If you cannot make a profit, no one is going to do it. I'm sorry, but that's how it is. So as a government, you have to you need to provide like infrastructure. You need to make sure that there is enough, that there are schools, that there is like parks and nature and stuff like that. But the buildings need to be built by actually the builders. So.
You see, housing is so hot topic that we can speak here like many hours to take. And question is many, but I think it's very important to work here together with local authorities level, with the government level, and of course it's coming question of the regional policy too. In some region, I think even in Estonia, I think same in Poland, some cities they have many apartments. Where we need the apartment, there where we have job, where we have high salaries, then more in the big cities, in the capitals, but the rural areas, they go to empty. We must, in government level, we must balance this with some smart regional policy to offer living and jobs for the region too. This is question. But I think to finish this, right now we have hope in the level of local authorities and the government, as we have right now European CAP. We have a new start of European housing policy. We can see what's going on. New commissioner have strong pushing for the local authorities from the committee region side, sure. But we see, I think, together with local authorities, with societies and with government, we have some overwide European policy. We can solve off in some question of housing, not all of them, but some of them.
Radosław, 30 seconds, please.
Okay. Ja myślę, że to...
I think the problem is with kind of fixed rents. If we actually set depreciation rates, rent rates, and of course we could offer a rebate in exceptional cases, but we would never allow a situation where people making a lot of money pay $12.50 per square meter.
After all the discussion we have had, do you think people in their 20s and 40 until 20 to 40 will be able to afford an apartment now with all the changes that are coming? Is there some hope?
Commissioner only.
At least there is some movement. And to end it on a very future positive tone, I think we didn't talk a lot about sustainability, but recently there was news about a Belgian company who had invented a new type of brick that absorbs CO2 emissions of the buildings, which is very good news, I guess, to show that innovation plays a massive role in how we can make our housing sustainable. We are at the booth, the European Liberal booth, if you want to come and talk. All to other speakers, thank you very, very much, and I wish you a very lovely evening.
Czy wytrzymasz klockowe tortury ze stoickim spokojem? Czy w twardych negocjacjach zachowasz zimną krew? Czy poddasz się dobrowolnej eksmisji ze swojego łóżka? Brawo! Test na obecność serca zaliczony. To znaczy, że ty też możesz być rodzicem zastępczym. Dowiedz się jak na testserca.pl.
It's not always easy to recognize. It may look like this, or like this. It may be a burden, but it is a responsibility that we embrace nonetheless. But if it means this for one person and this for someone else, maybe it ultimately means being there for one another. It isn't handed to us, but we know where to find it. And how it feels, how it tastes, and what it sounds like when we finally have it. It means different things to different people, but for many, it means everything. And if we all fight for it, will eventually bring us together.
Radość, nadzieja, życie, wyzwanie, pasja, pamięć, zaufanie, pokój, jedność. Słowa tworzą świat. Polskie Radio. Źródło wiarygodnych informacji.
Rodzina spółek Pelion to 12 tysięcy osób pracujących w ponad 300 spółkach w Polsce, Szwecji, Wielkiej Brytanii i na Litwie. Jesteśmy liderem w branży ochrony zdrowia. Od 1990 roku dbamy o długość i jakość życia. Pracować z nami możesz w jednym z 7 obszarów.
Polskie Radio.
Jedynka.
Kanapki z kawiorem.
Nadzwyczajna kasa.
Obrażanie dziennikarzy telewizji polskiej.
Chodzi o działania polityczne.
Ratowanie ofiar dla pedofilów.
Für Deutschland.
TVP Info. Włącz się na nowo.
Zapraszamy do Trójki. Od nowa.
Trójka. Program Trzeci Polskiego Radia.
uwielbiam szycie w sieci. Wczoraj podszyłem się pod wnuczka, wieczorem uszyłem intrygę na apce randkowej, a dziś planuję grubymi nićmi szyte oszustwo z promocją. Tak się szyje.
Na oszustów są sposoby. Zapoznaj się z poradami ekspertów na niedajsiepodszyć.pl.
Plany biznesowe powstają z marzeń. Dlatego nie ma dwóch takich samych firm. Jedni chcą działać na całym świecie. Innym cały świat mieści się w dłoni. Sukces biznesu to nie tylko jego wielkość, ale też szczęście, jakie przynosi ludziom. PKO Bank Polski.